Welcome to Grow Sessions. My name is Tony Pavlakis here at TSR Grow, and I've got my good friend Timo Bongartz from Cannavigia. Timo, how are you today?
I'm doing fantastic. Thank you very much for having me, Tony.
Well, this is great. We have to organize our times, and so because I know you're over in Europe and I'm over here in the States, but this is great. We'll just jump right into it. Timo, tell us a little bit about you and how you got into the cannabis industry.
Yeah, sure. My name's Timo, and I'm the CEO of Cannavigia. As you said, I got into the cannabis industry like 10 years ago. I started working for Osram, a big lighting company, and there, I was hired as an innovation manager to bring them into the horticulture space. Back then, the big competitor was Philips Lighting. And yeah, we did a lot of interesting projects, and then it led to an acquisition of a company called Fluence, where I was then general manager. So yeah, it was an interesting ride for the last years. Now I'm with Cannavigia, and we do software and consulting solutions for the cannabis space. Yeah, for the listeners from the US, we are kind of the metric of Europe. But we are not, forced by governments or states, but chosen by growers.
Here's where it goes. So Cannavigia, so how long ago did you start Cannavigia? Well, 3, 4 years ago, 2 years ago?
No, so it was founded by the founders 4 years ago, and I was hired over a year ago. And yeah, first I was chief commercial officer, so running sales, marketing, biz dev, consulting, and now 4 or 5 months ago I took over the role as CEO.
Nice. That's awesome, man. And so let's just dive right into like some of the Cannavigia. So you said that it works almost like a metric system, but it's chosen by the growers and the cultivators over in Europe. It's a choice, not as like a hand. But so what type of like what type of software have you guys created that does like the tracking?
Yeah. So exactly. So we are mostly in the medical cannabis arena, right?
Okay.
So because in Europe and in other countries where we are active, it's mostly medical. So in medical means you need to fulfill regulations like GSP and GMP. And there you need to track and trace a lot of things, what you grow, how you grow it, your waste, etc. So we developed a solution where you can, with QR codes, track and trace all these activities. Obviously, the data you are collecting not only good for regulatory purposes, but also, of course, to run your grow,
Sure.
to drive for operational excellence, and to also create data which is used along the further supply chain. Literally from seed to sale. So our solution has, we have modules for cultivation. We have a module for manufacturing. So if you process the cannabis in different formats, and also a dispensing module. So in countries where cannabis can be dispensed out, for example, in recreational purposes, like in Switzerland, we have an own dispensing solution as well. So it's literally tracked from seed to sale.
Nice. So in most of Europe, or where your most of your customers are they doing just mostly dry flower, or are they doing like is your software tracking like are they processing it into oils and they're doing like a vape cart, or are they doing I'll call it a pill or an edible? What's the market that you're tracking mostly now, or what is the market out there?
Yeah, that's a good question. So yes, yeah, our majority of clients are, located in Switzerland, Portugal, in other countries all over Europe. But we have also clients in LATAM, so South America, Central America, and also in Asia Pacific region like Thailand and Australia. So it's always a little bit different, right?
Sure.
That is the challenge with regulations in different countries. The majority of product is flower. Yeah, definitely. So that is the biggest category. But there is companies who are using our software are also processing, as you said, in oils, even edibles, and other formats, which is possible. Also hash in some countries
Yep.
for recreational purposes. So yeah, different shapes and forms. At the end, all cannabis based.
How do you guys track like stuff like I know that a lot of in the European market, there's many, like you said, medical growers that are doing the seed to sale, but a lot of them are also importing stuff because they just can't produce enough, possibly.
Yeah.
So when they're bringing it in from Canada, Australia, wherever it is, are you tracking it from that grow over like that? I'll call it a wholesaler. I don't know if that's what you would call it in Europe, but you call it like a wholesaler. They're shipping it over to the European market, and then are you tracking it when it hits land in Europe, or are you tracking it from the grow over where it's produced?
So everything is possible, right? We are not active in Canada, so we don't have any track and trace in Canada for production there. But if, for example, a wholesaler or a manufacturer is importing biomass, yeah, and they use our software, then from there on to transform it in different things, this is track and trace then, yeah. So then the biomass come in and then through the different production steps until it is a final product. Then this gets also a QR code. And then in some jurisdictions, then if this product then goes to a pharmacy, it is you have the goods in process, then you know, okay, it's on the inventory there, and then it's handed out to the patient or consumer, and then this is very often also limited what they can do and not. So, you know, for example, in a recreational pilot project, that's now a little bit abstract, but the people have only limits which how much they can buy per day or buy per month. So it needs to be ensured that they are within their limits. Every data is
That's the
anonymized.
customer, not the grow, not the pharmacy.
Exactly, the
Okay.
customer. So, and then the consumer patient gets a final product, and then still this, you know, the traceability goes until this point. Then if the consumer or patient is then scanning this QR code, the person sees the whole traceability. So you see from which mother, when the clone has been taken, under
Yeah.
which conditions, how long it was in veg, how long it was in flower, what was the parameters, all that you can show if you want, and gives this traceability to the final point, which is amazing because our biggest competitor for all of us here is still the black market. And
Yeah.
what the
That's
black
what I
market
was
cannot offer is trust and traceability. So what we want is not to only trace for the sake of traceability and fulfilling
yeah.
regulations, but also make it a value proposition actually to the end, so that patient and consumer see, wow, it has been grown like this at this date. Here's a certificate of analysis. It's a clean product, because all that the black market cannot offer.
When you, yeah, well, that's actually brought up a good point. Like the certificate, I'll call it authenticity, or maybe even, I know that in Europe it's a little bit different than here in the States, where aren't most strains or every strain doesn't have to be registered, and they have to do a period of testing. I'm going to call it not testing, but a period of growing and like proof of concept to like their governing board of that country. So they want to pop a new strain or they want to make a new strain that has to be kind of registered. Is that am I on the right?
Absolutely correct. You need to register the strain. And then you need to do stability test, because you are, you know, with registration, you say two values are very important, the THC and CBD value, right? And you need to be in a plus minus 10%
Okay.
variance of this value, batch over batch over batch over batch. If you
Okay.
are not within this range, you cannot bring this product to market. That would mean for the cultivator, they cannot bring it to market, and then they can only use it kind of as biomass and further manufacture it in any other, which means like pennies on the dollar value, right? So that
Yeah.
would be a big issue for cultivators. So it's very important to have yeah, consistency batch over batch.
How do you find that compared to, I like that idea where, because they are making medicine, there's a lot of medical patients and they're taking and using a product and they want some consistency. I feel
Mhm.
that that's actually pretty good. I mean, not saying they should adopt that here in the States, but I think that that's great as well. I just think that's a great idea. So, you know, people that are trying to get into that European market and bring all these strains, they definitely have to be a strain.
Absolutely, yeah, and it all originated out of the fact that you know, let's take Germany as an example, which is the biggest federal legal medical market in the world. Um, a year ago, cannabis was a narcotic, was listed as a narcotic. That means you could prescribe medical cannabis only to really severe conditions like epilepsy, etc. Right? So, and that is there the patients really need to rely on that the
Yeah.
medication is doing what it should. And then if you just think, normally they vaporize a 20% strain, all of a sudden it has 25. That has a significant
Mm.
impact on your medication, and you to dial in again is not something which is possible by law and should also not be from a patient point of view.
Yeah, I mean, the patient shouldn't be getting a hot load. They should be
Exactly.
prescribed something that's
Really.
not, because maybe they don't want, they're taking, like you said, for epilepsy, for MS, they have restless leg, or they have something, and they don't want, maybe they do want some of the euphoric effect, because it's not it's in the recreational side, but they don't want to be as euphoric. They want it to help with their need.
Absolutely. 100%.
Where do you see some of like what are some of the biggest in the global cannabis? What do you see like the biggest challenges right now for people that, as they're kind of divergent, and maybe even you can elaborate a little bit on like the global world of cannabis and what you're seeing for like the future.
Yeah, sure. So from a, further or from a global point of view, so we have several countries, as you know, which legalized cannabis for medical purposes. So the majority of countries where you have access to legal cannabis means medical cannabis. All right. So the biggest market out there is, as I said earlier, Germany. Here in Europe, you would have next coming like UK, Poland. Um, that does not necessarily mean that these countries are also the biggest producer, right? It's the from consumption point of view, right? So I will
Okay.
come to that. But so we're talking, if we talk about legal cannabis, mostly and by far medical. If we talk recreational, then we have, because of, especially in the EU, um, because cannabis is seen as a narcotic, to legalize recreational cannabis is under UN law as well as EU law extremely difficult. So the law is really hindering easy legalization. So what the countries are doing who want to do something in the recreational cannabis space, they do so-called pilot project. So they isolate regions out and make a pilot project, which is running for 5 years to collect data evidence to then make evidence-based legalization. So then you have like, and what is the typical research they would do under this pilot project is they want to understand the behavior of consumption. They want to understand the behavior of purchasing. So what they look at is things like, okay, if there is legal supply, do the people only go to legal or still buy in the illicit market?
Yeah.
How fast is the illicit market going down? Um, they want to understand if there is possibilities. You have flower, but also you have the possibility of vapes. Do people go from flower and rolling joints? And in Europe it's mostly spliffs, right, with tobacco,
Yeah.
so really
Yeah. Yeah.
difficult from a health point of view. So it's important to understand, do people move over from smoking spliff to vapes because that is harm reduction? So they want to find proof points that if you legalize, to dry out the black market, to do harm reduction, to see if more consumption goes up and things like that. So they will, it's with comprehensive field research is accompanied around these pilot projects. So, and this is happening in Switzerland as an example. All these pilot projects are done through our software. So really from production to sales. So we really see these behaviors and track this data. And also Germany is in the process to do that. So that is on a recreation side. But as said, now coming one step back, the majority is the medical market. That's the biggest bang for the buck.
And when they're doing that, so how does the government look at, maybe you don't know, because how do they know that the legacy market, black market, illicit market, however we want to word it, how do they know that that consumer now that has switched over to medical because they made it real, like the state or country made it easier for them to get a medical card or get approval, and how do they know that, like, is it going down? Are they just monitoring by both people is telling them, or how are they finding that out?
That is a very good question. So let's take a concrete example. So as I said, Switzerland did this or is doing this pilot project. There are in total 7 active pilot projects. And then a pilot project is, for example, for the city of Zurich. That's the
Okay.
capital of Switzerland, right? So it's quite big. So and if they do it, it means that you need to say, I want to participant as a citizen of Zurich. So if
Okay.
we travel to Zurich, we cannot participate, right? But you are as a citizen of Zurich, I want to participate, then you get a card, kind of,
Okay.
right? You need to fulfill requirements and you're so then with this card, you go and then every pilot project has different kind of point of sale. So some do pharmacies, some do dispensaries, some do social clubs, whatever, right? Also,
Coffee
this,
shops.
yeah, exactly. This I want to find out as well. What is the difference if the people you have only pharmacies or also dispensaries? How does this influence the point of sale
Mm.
itself, right? So these are the questions, kind of questions. So coming back, you go with your card in and say, for example, to the dispensary and say, "Hey, I'm Timo. I'm participating in the pilot project. Hey, great." Then this is scanned. This is a QR code scanned, and then you don't the seller does not see any name, anything. It's all anonymized, right? And then want to buy, like, I want to a 5 gram a pack of this of some edibles here, and if you are in your threshold of stuff you can buy, it's like all purchased and booked against your records, right? So you see in this anonymized data set that Timo, I'm like 39 years old, I'm male, out of Zurich, is buying this and that. So this data is tracked off from the legal. And then there is regular, a questionnaires you need to fill out to continue participating at these pilot projects, where it's like, are you buying from the black market and so on. All anonymized and all, the research around it is done by universities or and so on. It's like not like companies are doing it. It's like real universities to want to
Yeah.
find out what what is over time how it's changing, and we see interesting things, right? I can give you a couple of examples. um, you see, if you have a good portfolio, so not only 3 4 different flower categories
Yeah.
but more, and also maybe hash and maybe vapes, significant the people buy more from the legal versus you have a limited portfolio. So if you
Yeah. When
legalize,
you
you
go
need
into
to
your,
give more
yeah.
portfolio because otherwise, why should you, right?
You give them
The next
choices. They're giving them choices. They're giving them a
choice.
menu. They're giving them
Always good because if
choices
you're,
and
you know,
choices.
if you're in the illicit market, you have choices, they have a advantage, right? So
Yeah.
you need to have different categories. And then it's important to, then you saw that if there is really a lot of possibilities which the black market cannot really offer so much, like vapes, edibles, and so on. Also, this is helping because you have something to offer which you not really get in the illicit market, at
Right. They're
least in
not
Europe.
really getting there.
And that happens. So it comes down to easy access, so availability, good pricing. So the typical decision-making factors,
It's
the
a
four Ps.
regulated product. Like you're saying, it's a regulated product. It's clean and tested, and there's some traceability to it, where you really
Exactly.
don't know if you're going to that, your legacy grower, and they might be a great guy and could be a great grower, but you don't necessarily know what they if there's was it tested for heavy metals, was it tested for microbials, you just don't
Exactly.
know.
And what is maybe, and that is the last thing, what is also interesting that you see through this pilot projects, at least in Switzerland, that you see that now the majority of the population is in favor of a legalization because they saw 2 years later, actually it's good. There is no single police incident with legal cannabis. So there was not the case like, oh, this pack which has been bought was in the hand of a minor, or somebody ate an edible which is coming out of legal. So the police is like, okay, wait a minute, we have a safe product. It's all under control. We definitely prefer that versus the alternative. So you see also that, like, relevant stakeholders are seeing the advantages and get used to it. And it really helps to fight the stigmatization, because this is one of the biggest issues we are having is stigmatization of
Yeah,
cannabis.
of course.
Um, and I think
Yeah,
you are a
we
little
live
bit
in
ahead of the curve in the US because, but in Europe it's still, after years of cannabis is bad, and yeah, so that stigmatization is extremely important to fight.
Is there taxation on product like here in the States? I know that like a lot of the the grower, there's a taxation for the grower, there's a taxation for the manufacturer. There's like different stages, and I don't know, every state's a little bit different because in the states it's not collectively as a federal, it's actually run by each individual state. Are there taxes collected for each like city state within like Switzerland or Germany, or is it a collective tax that's the saying if you import it, this is how much you pay and that's the tax, or is it taxed again when it's sold to the consumer?
Yeah, that's a good point. So at the end, if because now from the biggest category, medical, there is a tax on it, but it's like taxed as other things, right? It's not like, oh, there is a special cannabis tax. At the end, it is the majority is from a tax point of view, obviously VAT, and that is
Yep.
paid at the end of the chain, right?
Okay.
So that is how it's run. That at the end the VAT is paid by the final consumer or patient. But of course you pay the normal company taxes, yeah, if you do profits and whatnot. But it is seen as a skew because medical is sold through pharmacies in Europe. It is seen as a skew like your painkillers, your other
Yeah,
stuff,
it's
right?
like anything. Yeah, they just see it as another item number. It's just a
It-
SKU and they're collecting
it's
the
a skew.
EC. But what's nice too, like you brought up a good point prior, that how they're tracking, the legacy versus the legal medical market. Any sale that I mean, in my head, I'm looking at it like they're saying if they don't know what the dollars then revenues are on the legacy market, but they know that every dollar that now goes into medical, they're taking away from the legacy market. So they know that they're reducing it. It doesn't matter. Did they reduce it $1? Did they reduce it, $10 million? But they do know that they pulled that amount of product off the street and now it's into a regulated business.
Absolutely. And I think what you just said is so important for discussions about legalization. In countries, when I take Canada now, because there we have the most, if I look at Stats Canada, I see you after legalization, you saw it increased a little bit of more consumers were
Yeah.
taking cannabis for sure, but it also plateaued. It's not like all of a sudden everyone smokes cannabis. It's not something everyone wants to do, right? So it some yes, but but then it plateaued. So that means if we see the same logic in other countries, maybe there is a little bit of an increase, but actually every legal supply means you take supply away from the black market. So
Agreed.
if somebody says, but no, it's actually good for the black market if you do legalization, that is not true. No data is showing that. It's showing that after legalization, a little bit it goes up, but then it's plateauing. That means everything you legalize, you take away from the black market with a clean, regulated product with for companies, for an industry which pay taxes, creates jobs, and so on. So, yeah, I think this is for me extremely important because we have still this discussion in Germany that the narrative is spun always like if you would legalize, it's just a subsidy program for the illicit market. It's not. It's not
It's not.
true. You take the pie does not get bigger, and you take a piece of the pie away from the black market and put it to the legal market. And over time, the pie gets more and more legalized, so to say, and
Yeah.
clean. So that's why, obviously, not only because I work in the industry, but I'm in favor of legalization.
No, and that actually brings it like kind of just another thing that it's just like that's like looking ahead into the future. Like, do you see as the future comes here and they're doing it, and I think as they get more data, and I think a lot of it has to go with education, and educated the consumer, educating the government, because a lot of the governments they just don't know. So that's why we obviously we do these podcasts like this. So we're trying to put a word out there. But where do you see like the cannabis market, like in Europe, as it evolves? I mean, we can do it as a global, as a whole of Europe, or we can take a specific country and say, okay, they've had a robust medical market. Germany, for instance, they have a robust medical market. They have data, they have tracking, they have imported products, they have processors that are taking that imported bulk flower, they're processing it into, like you said, a pre-roll or split, the product processing to eighths or whatever. They're distributing it through a pharmacy system, I think, in Germany. But in the
Yes.
future, do you see that going to, instead of the pharmacy system, are they going to keep it like that? Would they go to a dispensary model or a consumption lounge where they can sell it at the consumption lounge? Do you see that as the future, or everything's possible?
Yeah. So yeah, let's take briefly. So let's take Germany, because I think
Okay.
Germany is interesting. I personally, I'm located in Munich. I'm German. That's why it's an interesting market because I'm also there. But also, as I said, it's the biggest federal legal market, and it's in the center of Europe. And
Yeah.
you know, it's the biggest country in Europe, so it has always an effect also to other member states of the EU. So
Yep.
that's why it's interesting, and they are a little bit advanced from the legalization process. So it's interesting to see on the example of Germany what could happen for Europe, right? So if we see Germany, years ago, I think 2017, medical cannabis has been legalized, but only, as I said, it was a narcotic, meaning only for really severe stuff, you could get it prescribed. And then last year in April, it changed. It changed from it is not a narcotic anymore. What
Okay.
does this have for an effect is that for you know, more yeah, not as severe things like pain, for pain regulation, issues with sleeping,
Yep.
appetite, and so on, you can prescribe it. So with that, it's significant easier to prescribe it by doctors to patients. So what we saw, we had, I think like 2023, we had like in total like around 30 tons of medical cannabis. 24, we are like at like 70 to 80 tons. So it's like,
Oh, it's
ooh,
doubled up.
yeah. So and it is also we have all of a sudden, you know, also it got significant easier because also telemedical prescription is possible and is used and so on. It got like very easy access. And immediately you saw an effect that that the market grew.
With no medical card, correct? No, you didn't need a medical card
No,
after
you need to
2023 when
be
it was
you need
legalized.
to have a reason why a
You have
doctor
to have an
prescribes
ailment,
it.
or you call
Exactly.
a farm. No, does the pharmacy prescribe it, or do you have to go to a doctor? Like if I'm an international traveler, I don't want to bring product into the country, so I go into Germany. I can call a doctor, like you said, a tele access. They can, you tell them this is my ailment. I have anxiety. I have MS. I've got whatever my ailment is. I've got pain, and I'd like to get a prescription. They'll prescribe it, and then that goes to directly to a pharmacy. Or now do I get a slip of paper and I go to any pharmacy?
Yeah, so it's like you need to go to a doctor, but you can do it also so telemedical, right? So you don't know necessarily need to physically do it. There are some platforms where you can just fill out surveys without seeing a doctor. That is absolutely a gray zone.
Yeah, for sure.
Let's put it like this. Um, but yeah, coming back, yeah, you get it prescribed by a doctor. Even if you do a survey, a doctor needs to screen it and approve it, right? Then you get a prescription, and then you can go it into everywhere with this, and in Germany, even in the EU, to get your cannabis, right? So there are also online pharmacies, so you can directly send it to an online pharmacy and can get it delivered to your home. So
Oh, really? I didn't know that
that
too.
is
That's actually really
interesting.
neat.
That is interesting indeed. There are even platforms where you get it delivered within 90 minutes if you are in a big city. So 90 minutes,
So you're in Berlin, I could just call and I could
90
get a
minutes.
prescription filled and I could have it sent. They just
You
bring
got
it
it.
to my hotel if I wanted.
You got it. Right. But that is the situation that led to the fact that the market grew significantly. So and now the medical market yeah is prospering, has definitely, as always, if things like this happening, there are some challenges. And also in the system, I would call it issue. But this is, I always try to say it's normal. It needs to course correct. It needs to be adjusted, and so
Yep.
on. That is so. That's why, you know, even if we have challenges or issues, that doesn't mean that it's a problem. We need to fix it and correct it, right? So I always
Well,
try
they have
to
to
always,
identify. You don't know it's a problem until it is a problem, and then they identify it, and then they make a
you got
correction,
it.
and they'll fix it and move to the side.
Exactly. So, and I expect that this is continuing so that the market grows. So if we had like you know 70 tons, let's call it for 2024, we are waiting for the final Q4 numbers. At least I am not fully aware that they have been released. I don't think so. So let's assume it's like 70 tons, 70, 80 tons of for 2024. It will be over 100 tons in next year. So the grow will continue. If it's doubling again, I don't think so, but still significant year-over-year growth. So that said, in Germany, we have elections in February. And of course, elections always have an effect that could be revisited and looked at, and could also be used for discussion. So it's not easy to take it back, but there is some yeah, risk
Like
that there
pushback.
is a
I think in Germany, I was talking to someone, they said there is some pushback. They're a little bit nervous about the political party going in. It might not be as easy. Like you said, I don't think they'll take it back, but they're not going to make it as easy, or there might be some
Exactly. It's not
challenges.
expected that more, legalization steps are taken. The question is, do they pull something back? The point is, at the moment, it looks like that the potential party in power back then is a little bit more against cannabis legalization. Nevertheless, they still, in Germany, you always need to form a coalition with other parties, and normally the other parties, which would be the chosen parties to form a coalition, are pro-cannabis. So I guess it will stay as is and continue on the medical side. I don't expect new possibilities will arise for the recreational side in Germany. Before I go down in the recreational, one thing back to the medical. The important thing is if we look at the medical market in Germany, and let's expect it's 100 tons next year, nearly, I would look it up, but it's like not even 10%, most probably not even 5% of this is grown in Germany.
Really? So it's
That
all being
me,
imported.
yes. So
So that
in,
means that there's a demand for more cultivations in Germany. If they could grow it in Germany
but
and
there's a couple of things about Germany, all right? Let's be honest. It's damn cold, I can tell you.
oh yeah.
It's it is cold, meaning, the sun is not unfortunately our biggest friend here. That is one factor. Energy is relatively expensive, especially compared to the US, right? Energy prices are significantly higher. Labor is expensive. And still, we are in the European Union, and we have countries like Portugal, which is a cultivation powerhouse, similar
Sure.
conditions, weather conditions like in California,
Yep.
which have, greenhouses and so on. So the price per production will be lower. So you have access, and we are seeing, if we look at the 2024 data, so 50% of over 50% has been imported from Canada. Why? Also, there is bad weather, and so on, similar like in Germany, but there is so much excess inventory. So they converted the excess inventory a little bit
Yeah.
into cash and brought it into Germany. So, but at one point this will go down, so prices will go up, and then it's getting a little bit more competitive again. But we are seeing it from all different countries. It's coming to Germany. So that means for all the growers out there, there is a potential to get into Germany and into other European countries because production takes time to ramp it up. You know it
Yep.
very well. I know
Oh,
you are in a lot of growth, and you know how long it takes to grow a consistent batch. Yeah, it's just like not the
well, they have
first
to
batch
grow
is
consistent,
never the
right?
best one.
Well, they need the technology. Like that's actually kind of it's like a segue into like that. So that's where the technology that you do, that we do, as the traceability, the tracking, the registering of strains. So they need to know these things. So if you want to get just, in a dream world, the US becomes, I don't want to say federally legal, but now that I can grow and export, I'm a grower here in Rhode Island, Massachusetts, New York, whatever. I'm growing a certain room for my European customers because there's a demand. It's a registered strain. I'm growing it for them. They have their inspector. I have to grow it within their parameters, but they need that technology to be able to say, I grew this one strain. This is going to be X amount of yield. This is going to be X amount of, harvest for my crop, and it'll be ready to be shipped out to Germany or wherever it is legal, but they need the data. They actually need that
Sure.
data in order to say, just like anything, like there's a lot of consumer products now that they do have that QR code and they have that traceability. A lot of the food, like you see at food and like broadline distributors in there saying, I bought some fish, where did it come from? I bought
Yeah.
some produce, where did it come from?
Yeah.
So now
You're
they know
right.
it all the way back to, and then they go to that farm, and then that farm has to be able to produce some information that says, this is what we grew, this is the soil we grew it in, this is the nutrients we gave it, this is the testing we had to do along the way. This was and they can even break it down, like with our stuff, we can break it down to like how much power basically how much did it cost to grow from my
Exactly.
side. So then it's a feasible crop.
Yeah. But what you just said, so if you know I know we have no crystal ball to look into, but potentially if there would be a reclassification of cannabis in the US to Schedule 3, and it would be medical, and a producer in a state would fulfill the international pharmaceutical regulations, which is GACP and then GMP, they could export into Germany. And I think what we saw in the US that, there's a state coming online, and then at the beginning it's great, and then, cost, price per pound goes down, and then it at some point goes below the break-even point, and then, they're struggling. You need to create access again, right? And this is avenues. So I really, yeah, and I truly believe in a global supply chain. So that would be a possible route if steps in this direction would be taken in the
Yeah, and
US.
it's the compliance. Do you feel that in the European market, in Germany, is it beneficial to be vertically integrated, where they own the grow, they own the processing, and they own the dispensary? Is that an option in Germany or not? Not necessarily.
Oh yeah, so that is obviously, I want to give it first a general statement.
Yeah,
I There has been no agricultural product where there is vertical integration. I
interesting.
don't know. There is no. I'm long time in not only cannabis in the horticulture industry. So I dealt with tomatoes, cucumbers,
Sure,
orchids, chrysanthemums, whatever, right? All different kinds of flowers and crops, strawberries, whatnot. You don't see a grower who is also owning an Aldi and a processing. No, and Aldi does not own the fields of apple trees, right? It is you and if you vertically integrate, you only do it if you are like the champion in this chain, and then you go
sure,
from there backwards or downstream, upstream, but you don't start to build the whole chain from the get-go. Why? Because you are only as strong as your weakest link in the chain.
sure,
But besides, you really make out of every chain a profit center, right? That's a different thing, right? But if you really want a connected vertical supply chain, you are only as good as your weakest link in the chain. So I'm, but I understand, however, why in cannabis it happened because of regulation, and you had limitations and you needed to, but it's artificially designed in through the issue of regulation. As an entrepreneur, me personally, Timo, right? I don't want to, I would not do it, never, because I want to be the best in my category.
sure.
And then out of my category, I expand. But otherwise, you are only, if you are everywhere just middle or not so good, yeah, you are competing in every chain element with somebody who's maybe better. So what is your right to win at the end then? Huh? So coming back, that is my personal and general answer to it. Now, coming back to do we see it in Europe? Yes, but significant less. And most of them who had divested and focused because the cash burn was too big, and
Oh, yeah,
then
it's massive.
needed to stop the bleeding, course corrected, and then start to expand again. So yeah. That said, we see, however, if in pilot projects, there we see in smaller areas, their vertically integrated companies make sense because in Switzerland there are growers who are also, maybe have a dispensary, and that makes sense. You own a little category, and then you own it to the end to really capture all the margin alongside.
Yeah.
Yes, but if you're in the global, no,
No,
I
it's
don't
gonna be
see that.
harder. I think you're right. That I mean, that goes back to like compliance and following rules and making sure that people are doing. I mean, there's checks and balances. I think that that's the only way that the business will prosper is going to be checks and balances. So I think if as they level the playing field, um, like you said, like they're going to level the playing field as if I'm a grower, I should be a damn good grower. If I'm going to be a manufacturer, I'll be a really good manufacturer. And if I'm going to be the pharmacy, um, I'll just do it like you said. Like it's hard to do them all very well, and like you can
Yeah,
actually see that here in the States with many people will just have a brand.
yeah.
They're not growing anything, but they might do a manufacturing where they'll be in a few different states and they'll set up shop to just manufacture or buy biomass, make pre-rolls, make their vape carts, and then they sell it into the dispensary. They know that they're good at branding and marketing. Where the grower might not have been, but they're buying white label product, and they add their terpenes or whatever to it, and then they run with it. but I feel that jumps back into like some of the things with like the compliance, like with software and in your software, do you feel like the business facing side of it, what do you feel like, is there any challenges or advantages?
Using a software,
Yeah,
you
using
mean? Yeah.
software.
Yeah. So, still also there, my biggest competitor is not other software companies, it's actually pen and paper. So, I go through facilities, 1,000 pen and papers. Um, you know, I just always compare it to other industry. Do you see a professional production site where the people do pen and paper? No, you don't,
No,
right?
you
So,
don't.
obviously that is the transition totally to full, digitalization of steps is coming due to the fact it's more efficient. You have it under control. You can use data to predict, you forecast, etc. Bring down cost, increase your sales price. So I see a lot of advantages using it. The challenge, however, why not everyone is then just opting in for a software immediately is due to the fact that the legal market is still a new market in Europe, and it means that also sometimes people are involved from the illicit market and so on. Have been trained to not document anything. Yeah,
No,
you
yes, that's
don't document
true.
anything because you don't leave any proof. So now you tell them document everything. So it's like, whoa, it's a huge change, right? That's one thing, and the other is, you know, um, the if I see the typical stakeholders I'm dealing with, I deal with the quality department. They want to have a lot of documentation. The cultivators say, "Hey, get me rid of the red tape, and I don't have time for that. I need to grow." The CEO wants, "Hey, I don't care about all that. I want just the data to forecast." So everyone has a little bit of something else. So also, and if they found a system for themselves, like with pen and paper when they were smaller, to tell them now you need to make a huge transition and change management of your business processes and stuff. It is like, it's not easy, right? They are running in a running operation, and now you tell them, hey, we implemented software, now you need to do it differently. Still the plants grow, still you need to go in and defoliate. It's like, you have not all of a sudden more time available to learn and to adapt all your business process. So that's why it is sometimes not so easy, because it's always accompanied with a change management angle to it. And that's true for all technologies, right? If you go to a grow which used HPS, yeah, people think, oh, you switch out HPS, put in LED, and off you go. Geez, man, it's absolutely not the
So many
case. You
things
need to
that come
look
in,
at
there's
all the
variables.
other things and adopt it and start to run this engine new. And this takes a while. And
Yeah, it kind of
so,
chugs along.
yeah, same
Do
here.
you do you feel that like with that compliance and software as they scale to get bigger, it's only going to help them? I think it's help the industry like as a whole or overall, it'll help the industry because now people are learning from their mistakes. And you try to mitigate your mistakes, just that's business. But I feel like the technology and data can help the businesses. I mean, do you agree with that? I mean,
Totally, totally. So, we are seeing, for us, it's important to also bring now more sensor data in, right? And then correlate sensor data with incidents, right? And then you become really more compliant, actually, but also you get more insights into your cultivation and do risk mitigation, because all this regulation comes or is there to secure and safe, and to ensure patient safety. Yeah?
yep,
So it's not like we do it for the reason is to have patient safety and have safe products. So more control and more insights and predicting a potential issue is mitigating risk. And mitigating risk in cannabis means also securing your crop, which is worth a lot of money, which you want to secure. So we are seeing, by adopting technologies like ours, that they safeguard their holy grail, their production, right?
yep.
And produce consistent product and hit the thresholds they need to, because otherwise they cannot bring it to market to secure ongoing, that their product will be also at the hand of
Well, it's
patients.
ongoing
And
revenue. I mean, that's what the stockholders and shareholders. Is the German
exactly.
market still I'm not German or European market still primarily private? held, or are the banks involved? I mean, how's the banking and like
Yeah, that is like in
availability?
the US, it's really
Right.
difficult to get yeah, it's even difficult to to get a bank account, right? It's difficult to transact, it's difficult to find payment providers if you deal with cannabis. So the access to capital, to classical traditional capital is extremely difficult, which is annoying
Yeah.
because with that it becomes investor driven. Nothing against investors, I love investors, but the point is, all of a sudden, you adjust also very often strategy and need to do it's different if you get money alone from the bank. It's a different relationship as getting a new stakeholder in your ecosystem and deal with that. And still, and that is I have to say, it's still an agricultural product, right? It's still a plant we are growing, and there are things which you not always can predict. A plant remains a plant. There are things due to the fact that it's not a, a chemical process of producing a painkiller, which is
Right.
always the same. It
Yeah.
is
It's
not. You
different.
don't have full control. We try to get as much control as possible, but there's things not in our control, and there's regulations which could change, which could open a window of opportunity, or could close something. And that is always difficult with investors because it's a lot of scenarios and so on. And this is not necessarily what investors want, right? They want, okay, this is going, if this is going, okay, and there's a kicker coming for expansion, exponential growth, right? So that's why it's a pity that there is so limited access to traditional
Same with here. I
financing.
mean, there's some stats. I go to a bunch of financial meetings, and they're saying that statistically, less than 5% of the people will get the funding they need. And I'm sure it's probably similar in Europe. I don't think, if there's a
Yeah,
hundred people that may apply for license, I mean, we would hope that'd be higher, obviously, for you and I in our industry and our business. But I mean, it's the hard reality of it. There's just, unless you're bringing money to the table, getting the investor, because all of a sudden the investor, it sounds great and hey, cannabis is legal and I'm writing the golden ticket, but now they have some data from Europe as well as the States that saying the risk of running a good business. You still, I mean, you could be a great grower, but like you're saying, staying in your lane, are you good at running a business? You need to have a good, solid team that this
you're,
is your controls, and you're not overpaying for. You're watching your staff and your
yeah.
employment cost. You're watching all your inputs and your outputs and your utility, and making sure you're getting on the right
You're
track.
so right. You're
It,
so right.
it's
And also investors, obviously, if I invest, I want, go scale fast, right? I'm not investing to do micro steps, right? That's not then I go and put my money on the bank account and get my interest, right? For
yeah,
that. I want there the potential that it grow fast. So very often that forces cultivators and people in the cannabis space to immediately think big.
yeah.
But then we saw it. So many failed because it's just the investment is high and you have all this investment but still you need to get this engine running to produce and get cash flow. And there is, think big but start small is so important because yeah, otherwise it's the risk is extremely high for failures. Yeah, that's why I always hope or try to say that hey, think big but start small to get it going, because then you know your stats, you know what's going on, and then you can replicate easier and course correct where necessary.
What are your feelings on like they Germany last year launched that smaller I'll call it, it's like a caregiver model, but they're doing the C what is this, the
CCs,
cannabis
the
clubs,
social clubs.
the Cannabis
Y-
Social Club. Yeah, they
Yeah,
launched it, and we've been talking to a lot of people. We're seeing some start now after almost a full year of being legal, just getting there. A lot of people are applying thinking they can just get in there and grow, but there's actually a lot of parameters because again, that goes back to having a team where still got to run a business. I think the parameter of it has to be a nonprofit. Like you have to pick up at this. Like there's a lot of different things that are going in. How are you feeling that model is going right now?
yeah. Also a very good question. To answer this question, I would, I mentioned earlier in April they made also in the medical space, it's not a narcotic anymore, and it's now easier to prescribe. In the same law, they also allowed these clubs and home growing. And I wanted to briefly say the two sentences to that. It's so German because the Germans they love gardening and they love clubs. There is no country in the world where people are more members of different kind of clubs, of a soccer club, of a whatever club. So it's such a German legalization to allow them gardening and be members of clubs. So I just want to say I love it because it's really so damn German. Now coming back, so home growing is great. You can grow 3 plants at home, so that's nice. But now coming to these clubs, the clubs structure is as follows: 500 private people can be a member of a club, and this club grows for these members, right? And you get your weed out of the cultivation of these clubs. The the challenge, however, it needs to be non-profit. That is it's called in Germany e.V. So they are really it is you need to be really an enthusiast to do that. And I love it and I like it. But the Germans did it in a German way, putting also a lot of regulation on it. And
Yep.
where's my issue here personally? Is that the people who are doing it, they're doing it with passion and they are great people. And they do it for the members, not to get rich and anything. They really believe in the community grow, which I really love. But if something is wrong, these people are privately liable. And
Yeah.
that is like, what? So you take all the risk, but you don't get the upside. What a
Yeah,
fuck!
because you can't be
It's like,
profitable.
what a deal is this, right? It's like, sorry, it's like if you're an entrepreneur, I take the risk, but I want the upside. But here it's like, hey, you take the risk, but you don't get the upside. I dislike that as an entrepreneur very much. However, I like it coming back. I like this model in the idea of it growing for the community and so on, because yeah, I think this is great, giving access, and it's also a very German way to do it. Um, Now we are seeing in total all over Germany 400 clubs put in an application to be
Okay.
allowed to cultivate as these kind of clubs. 400 in within, you could put it in, I think in July. So we are talking about like 6 months in, and 400 put in an application, fulfill all. So we have now roughly 40 out of this, so like 10%, the license has been granted to them. So 40
Okay.
are cultivating. And now the
Well, they
first
granted the license. Are they cultivating though?
yeah, so out of the 40, that would be there is no public information, but I would guess like 20. So half of this 40 are cultivating already. And now we have like around 5 who dispensed already. Yeah.
Oh,
So
wow. Okay,
dispensed
that's good.
out to their
To their
members.
members, to their member group.
Yeah. So and also there, so we as a company we packaged our software and provided for this segment. So then it goes really from production into dispensing out, and there it's the same like in the pharmacy example I gave earlier in the recreational. The member comes in, it's scanned, you get your cannabis, it's track and traced, all is done. So if the somebody would come, it's like, hey, do you do here everything good? Yeah. All good, nothing to do, nothing to worry. So that's why we also, because I told you about the issue, the people who run this are personally liable, and our promise is we want to take the liability risk to a minimum because we
Yeah.
track and trace according to the law, so that the people, if they do it with their enthusiasm, don't have such a risk. That is our promise and why we entered the space, because we thought, okay, there is a value proposition of our offering there. So it is happening and it's getting bigger, and I think yeah, we'll see more and more. The what is a
Get up
little
and
bit
running more in Germany. Do you think they'll
yeah
adopt that? I mean, like, so for the future of like Europe, where do you
yeah
see the future? Where do you think it's going to go? Do you think it'll go more of these social clubs, or do you think it'll be more they'll bring in more manufacturers or more producers in Europe? Where do you see it in the next 5 or 10
so
years?
first I see that countries which are still in the medical program and like a little bit stuck, they are advancing. What I do mean is like, hopefully Spain, it's a big giants, right? In Spain, France, and these companies are all Italy. There's still a lot of potential. Also, in itself, in Portugal, for example, they are a huge cultivation powerhouse, but they barely gave any strains and products out, which is allowed in Portugal to get prescribed. So yeah, there's still so first medical, then we see more pilot projects in like in Switzerland and now Germany. we see maybe Czech, right? Czech Republic. So there's also something moving. And social clubs, there we see this structure we see in Germany. We see in Malta, which is a isle
Yeah.
country in the Mediterranean. Obviously in Catalonia, in parts of Spain, right? So we see different things, and that is good. This is good. In the Netherlands, we see, the famous coffee shops, and
Yeah.
it's everything is illegal. In the moment it's on the shelf of a coffee shop, it's surprise, surprise legal. It's totally absurd model, right? It's like everything's illegal, and the moment it enters the shop shelf, it got legal. Yeah. So, and this, they also stopped with like granting 10 license for cultivation, which are now supplying out of the Netherlands the coffee shops. And they started
Oh,
taking,
they're only selling within their country. They're not exporting, correct?
no, no, yeah, medically, yes. They produce medical cannabis and export out. But what I see, there are different setups, and that is good because it shows and collects evidence. And now it's on all of us to create and collect data, because
Yeah.
there is nothing better for discussion and of legalization than data, because we didn't have data because it was all illegal. So on
Yeah.
which data we could have any good discussion. Now, through this different initiative, a lot of data will be collected, and that is our, as an industry, our responsibility to let this data surface, to create facts and figures, to help and give ammunition for the argumentation in sake in favor of legalization. But I see the biggest thing is really more medical. More countries in Europe will really give access to medical cannabis to their inhabitants, and that is the biggest driver for really also for other producers around the world to enter this market. And then we see this more recreational project as little pilots and test beds.
Sure.
That's perfect. And then we use it to, and then hopefully, because if we want to have really recreational cannabis legalized in Germany or anywhere else, we need to change EU law. To change
Yeah.
EU law, we need that the majority of member states are in favor. So we need to create a critical mass of people who are in favor. So
And that
that's
goes
why,
back
and
to
you that
technology and
come,
data.
yeah,
Like,
exactly. So
if you can give
data,
them the
data,
data for
data.
that country, then that country can go to another country and they give it, and then it kind of gets a little bit global, a little bit more global and bigger, and then it goes to the EU. But this has been great, man. I'm so glad like we came on. I mean, we could probably talk for hours about the European market and things, but this has been awesome. It's so great to learn about like the European market and what things are going on and what you guys are doing and the strides you're taking. But yeah, this is just amazing. I mean, I don't want to. I know it's amazing that we've already been on for an hour almost. So this is chatting.
Thank you. Yeah, I
But
love the conversation. It felt very, very natural flowing. That is always very nice. Thank you for having me. And I don't know when we publish it, but the next stop for me is Cannabis in Barcelona, which
yep,
is for our community. I think a very if you are there, let me know, and this is my
get
face, and say
together.
hi.
Heck yeah.
Because it's all about let's connect and create an industry together. That is
Collaborate. I think
our
the
job.
industry is amazing on that. I see that here in the States. I see it in Europe. It's a lot of collaboration with different vendors and different people and seeing how we can all work together because there's a lot of I think there's plenty of business out there for everyone to collaborate with.
100%. Totally agree.
But this is great. Well, thank you, Timo. I have my friend Timo Bongartz. This is Grow Sessions. My name is Tony. We'll get all the information. We'll get your data out there and publish it out there, and then we'll go from there. Thanks so much again, Timo.
Yeah. Happy day. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so
And
much.
see you soon.
All right, talk to you soon.
Ciao.